Yeah, we're back on. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Strategy Hour Sunday, and we can now start. My name is, you guys know my name, and today we have Mr. Samuel, head of strategy up in the sky, and it was part of like the core people when we first started this last year. Him and five other strategists gave us their time, and it was really great to have them. So this is more like getting into like that part of strategy that's really core for everybody. Because in terms of doing strategy, you really need to be able to do your research. You need to ask the right questions, from briefing questions to research questions to strategy questions to execution questions, all the questions that you need because strategy is about that having that logic complete and being able to ask questions is where you start to build the right questions, the right research, the right information that you need for your deck. And so it did that for us last year, and this year is here again. I'm very excited. I'm always excited. I don't know if I'm more excited than you guys for all the classes that I have because it's mostly the guys that I want to listen to that I'm always having on this space. So I'm going to give him the mic. I think he's been like off and on. I want to be sure that he's here. Yeah, I think he's now back with us. I was good afternoon. Nice to have you again, and really excited. I'm not going to drop the floor. I think I've done my intro. I think you dropped off introducing you to the class, how this part is really important for us. So I'm going to now hand over the mic to you. We usually do 1 hour and you have control of the class however you want to push it. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
All right. Thank you, Jamal. Hi, everyone. Please confirm if you can hear me. Unfortunately, at the point when I'm supposed to start talking, the you people's MTN started misbehaving. So please confirm if you can hear me. You can drop an emoji, just do anything, just wave or do something. Okay, Joshua, I see you. Jamal, okay. All right, now makes sense. I am supposed to present. I hope that this whole thing enables me to do that, but please hold on for me while I do that. Jamal, are you there? Jamal, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, I'm here.
So, I just sent you my what's it called, my presentation, a PDF file. Could you help me project it from your end? I'm having troubles doing this. I
All
don't know
right.
what's happening to Google Meet. Always give me that sheet anytime I'm about to do it.
All right, I'll do that.
All right, thank you. So people, interesting. Okay, guys. While Jamal is trying to get this up, I would speak to myself. Let me do a quick introduction of myself. I know he has spoken, like you rightly said. I'll put a face to it. This is who I am. My hands are up. Right. My name is Samuel Sokale. I have seen people called me Sholake. Someone DM'd me on Twitter. The person probably here, and he mistakenly called me Sholake. So my name is Shokale, not Sholake. Sholake sounds similar, but it's Shokale. Currently, I head strategy and insight at Up in the Sky. And before that, I used to work at Hedelman, where I led communication strategy in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Ghana markets for multiple brands. Then before that, I was at Chain Reactions Africa. For Chain Reactions, I was at DSL. I was at Exterion in Dublin. I was at African American School of Creative Science, Dubai. Like I've just been everywhere, right? So I've been doing this strategy thing quite for a while now. This is the second time I'm coming here, and I'm quite, what's the word now? I said I'm impressed, and I'm particularly telling Jamal, thank you for putting this together and also being consistent with it. Um, it's not easy doing this one, and also the industry needs this a whole lot, right? If you are the type that interact with talent in the industry across agencies and also businesses, I mean, both agencies and client side, you would agree to a very large extent that a lot of strategists, young strategists that need this. So Jamal, kudos to you, and also kudos to you to the team for joining in and wanting to be a part of this. Starting off today's conversation is not going to be like last year's. I think the last year I made a mistake that that I've deliberately avoided this year. I focused more on how instead of what is meant to be done because this year's topic is quite related or quite similar to the one I addressed last year. And that said, I don't know what I did to Jamal. I gave it a very complicated, was sort of like as if he get beef with me, sent me that topic, and I'm like, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, how do I deal with this? Right? But it's all good. I like it. But what I did with the topic was to refine it, right, and bring out the needs, what is essential for us to, talk through in this particular session. And as we talk through it, where it lands on, right? I looked at the outcome and I rephrased it to what you are seeing on your screen, which is understand people through research, right? Understand people through research. The interesting thing about this reframing of the topic is the fact that it is not talking about the idea of doing research, if you pay attention to it. Instead, it is telling you what research should do for you when you work in marketing or you're a strategist, let me put it particularly. So it's not just about doing research, right? It's about understanding people after you have done research. So research is a means, is a tool towards understanding people. And it's so interesting because there are tons and tons of research reports, both secondary researches and primary researches that we conduct for ourselves. And a lot of them leads nowhere when it comes to understanding people, right? Ipsos, GWI, what's the word now? Which one is this? Kantar, Hero Monitor, name it. A lot of reports, a lot of research, and all of those things. But how many of them actually land you on the things that you need to know in terms of understanding people and framing strategies that are actually very good and effective? So this particular session is going to, I hope it's going to help you, get better at, looking through research or doing research that helps you understand people. And in the course of that, next slide, please. I have structured this particular research into, oh, I've just introduced myself. Please move on. I have, yeah, thank you. Leave it there. I have structured this research in three phases, right? The first phase is the motivations, right? And the first motivation, I frame this motivation, but I'm not really literally motivations. The first motivation I'm going to tell you today, right, is, well, let me say, okay, let me put it this way. This entire phase, the motivation phase, is me eating you with hard truths about the industry, both Nigeria and globally, hard truths, right? But I don't want you to say them as something that might hurt you or some things that might derail your confidence, right? Instead, I want you to work with them. And right? And lastly, I want you to pay attention to this particular side of the presentation, right? Please pay attention to this particular side of the presentation. I think it's a fundamental part that helps you do a lot of the things that you might take away from this part. So let's go. First slide. Yes, you are dispensable, man. You're very dispensable. Um, there's this thing in this industry. It's very particular or peculiar to the Nigerian industry where we are very big. Once we are being given the title of a strategist, we feel like we are the best thing after Bitcoin, right? Then we walk around with our head up in our asses, thinking, oh, the agency cannot function with us, without us. Rather, the the marketing industry needs us to survive and all of those things. But it's not true. We are very, very dispensable. And when I say dispensable as a strategist, your role in the advertising creation, measuring, performance process is very, very dispensable. And if there's anybody on this call that has paid attention to or tried to study the history of advertising down to the history of strategy, you would agree with me. And I can run you through it quickly so you can actually get it. So advertising was invented a year ago, I think decades, centuries ago in the 18th century. But strategy didn't become a thing until 1960. Oh, right? Advertising has been a thing since the 18th century. But strategy or account planning, as Stephen King and Massimo Pollitt named it, did not become a thing until 1960. Now, before the advent or the emergence or the birth of strategy or account planning, people have been doing advertising and it's been working, right? Now, in 1960, the idea of the world had changed. The world had got more complicated. Things have become very, very quite difficult to make sense of, right? And there was a point, it was at that point also in the United States of America, the American industry, advertising industry, were struggling with coming up with campaigns that actually resonates or drives the needle for American businesses. Now, Stephen King, then, which was with JWT and his friend Massimo Pollitt, were in the United Kingdom. They understood what was happening in America and they didn't want that to happen in the UK. So they felt like they were like, our American friends or counterparts or industry are messing up. And they're messing up because they struggle to make sense of the world from a qualitative point of view. So they both came together to start what we call advertising account planning or advertising strategy. And strategy for them was just, they were not looking at the people that had, what was it called, the best graduating students here and there. No, that were not the founding philosophies or ideologies or purpose of strategy. What they were looking at, yeah, were they were looking for people who understand how to make sense of complex situations in the world, how those complex situations affects human being, bring that understanding into the agency, use it to define the client's problem, use it to frame an insight that now informs creative output, right? So the essence of you being a strategist, it's not to create advertising that works. Advertisement has been working before strategy became a thing. Your role or your primary role in the advertising or campaign creation process is to improve the possibility of campaign effectiveness. I will take that again. Your role or your primary responsibility, yeah, is not to make advertising work. Advertising can work without you, can be effective without you. It was for multiple years before strategy became a thing. But your job, yeah, is to improve that reality, that truth that advertising can work without me, but I need to improve it. The likelihood that advertising can work with me, right? So if today all agencies in Nigeria sack all their strategists, trust me, a lot of them will still be alive. They will still thrive. And I don't know how many of you work on the agency or advertising on the agency or the client side here. But for some of you that work in agencies, you would notice that most agencies raise and praise their creatives over strategists, right? It is what the creative says that flies. Sometimes they listen to you as a strategist, but the CEO or the agency owner would mostly gravitate towards the creative people before they gravitate towards you. Not because they hate you, not because they don't like you, not because they don't think strategy is not necessary, but because they know and they understand that if strategy don't really, really, really work like that, we will still do creative, right? Next slide. But the fact that you are dispensable, yeah, does not mean that you cannot be indispensable. You can be indispensable. And you being indispensable starts with the title of this particular deck, which is Understanding People Through Research. It is that part of advertising creation process that every other people agency does not pay attention to or don't want to do. Again, I'll go back to Stephen King and Massimo Pollitt when they started advertising strategy. And I remember I don't know what I was listening to. I can't tell what, maybe it was Bill Benbach, but I was listening to somebody who says that when Stephen King was asked to describe the role of a strategist in the advertising creation process, he said the advertising strategist or a strategist or an account planner is the voice of the consumer. That was what he said. He said the strategist is the voice of the consumer in the advertising planning and execution process. And it implies that while accounts or the client service are speaking the language of the client, they are defending the clients, they are being the voice of the client and the accounts that they serve. And the creative are being the voice of the agency and all of those things. Your job is to be the voice of the consumer. But you cannot be the voice of the consumer successfully, excuse me, if you don't understand these people, if you don't live them, if you don't breathe them, if you are not part of their life, their ecosystem, the context that shape them, the things that influence them, the things that annoys them, the things that makes them aspire, their fears, their aspirations, their purposes, their impulses, their annoyance, their grievances, if you are not part of these things in their daily life, you cannot understand them. And if you don't understand them, you cannot be their voice in the agency and you become dispensable. But you can be indispensable if you understand this role, this fundamental role, and you play it to the optimum, right? You become indispensable. And Steve Wall said something, what was, I think, sometimes last year, and said, if you're a strategist in the industry, sorry, in an agency, and your agency people don't come to you for clarity on anything that has to do with the outside world, then you are just, what was the word he used? I think he just said he used a very abusive word, but what I was trying to say was that you are not a strategist. You are just a waste of space. Because ideally, when you are in the agency, when the creatives, the accounts, the operations people are struggling to make sense of what is happening in the world, and want to actually make sense of it, whether there is a brief or not, the first person that should come to their mind is the strategist. They should come to you and say, "Oh, hi. So I read in the news that this, what is happening? What?" You should be able to help them distill it very clearly, simply, right, and briefly, that it's clear to them, it makes sense to them, and they can move on with their life or whatever it is they want to do. Next slide, please. So I just spoke about this, right? And I said that yes, you are dispensable, but you can be indispensable. And your ability to be indispensable is rooted in you being able to understand people and the context that shapes them. And when you are able to understand people to the granular part, to the part that they even themselves do not see themselves, then it means that you're able to unearth insight, right? It is that part, again, I'm saying it is that part in the industry or in the agency architecture and the campaign creation process that a lot of people don't pay attention to. People don't focus about it for a lot of reasons. And some of the reasons I'll cover it. But these truths are fundamental truths that I want you to hone, I want you to understand. Yeah. Uh, it's a sort of motivation, like I rightly said, but I think that's a fundamental thing for us to cover because it now becomes a springboard for us to go into the next phase of this presentation, which is us covering the necessities. Next slide, Jamal. Now, another thing I want you to understand, right, at the second phase of this presentation is the fact that in account planning, in strategy, or in advertising, every research is human centered. Every research is human centered. We don't have animal centered research, neither do we have robot centered research or alien centered research. Again, the job of advertising is to improve the chances of a target market or a target audience, their chances of actually considering to buy a product or to take an action either immediately or in the future time. So every now and then, every minute, every moment, we are dealing with human beings. We're not trying to move animals to action. We're not trying to move aliens to action. Neither are we trying to move robots to action. We're always trying to influence people, influence humans to do certain things immediately or later in the future. So every kind of research, whatever it is you call it in your agency or in your area, it's always human centered. We are dealing with human, and that is how I see it, and that's how I explain it to be. And if you look across the campaigns that you've seen, the ones you enjoy, the ones that have won FEs, the ones that have won Cannes, the ones that have won Clio, that have won D and AD awards, they are campaigns that actually moved humans or moved people to actually act, to do certain things. So when we say human-centered research, is to me it's tautological, it's redundant because ideally What are we doing if we're not doing research that are centered, right? Next slide, please. Now, yes, these are the non-negotiables for you to be able to understand people through research. I know that so far in this strategy hour was workshop compilation or arrangement or program, you probably have listened to other speakers that was giving you frameworks and all of those things, which is fantastic, right? That is very necessary for you to do whatever it is you do in your agency or probably on the client side, which is fantastic, right? But I don't have much of that for you today, right? What I have for you are things that are primarily very, very soft skill focused that aids you to use those things that other fantastic and smarter speakers have given you in these sections. Because this industry is riddled with frameworks, tools, and all of those things, but a lot of people either don't use them or use them very wrongly, right? And on multiple occasions, in particularly of strategies, when you're dealing with human, you cannot always rely on tools, frameworks, and all of those things because humanity evolves, people evolve. Even you that you're listening to me, you have evolved, right? I've also evolved. But the frameworks that we've inherited from Jack and AI Trouts, from David Acker and all of those things, most of them are still there. They have not evolved with humanity. So I will not be giving you any of that. Instead, I'll be giving you the software or the soft skills that I think that you need to use them, those tools, if you have been given any, in order to understand, people through research. And that is what I call the non-negotiables, which are the things that you cannot do without if you truly want to understand people through research. No matter how versed, how deft, and very smart you are to use frameworks or to do research, if you don't have these things that I'm about to talk about, I think that you are on the losing end and you most likely not understand people. The first is next slide, please. Next slide, next slide, next slide. No, no, go up to the next, the previous one, please. Yes. For a strategist, research is the end, though. I swear to God. Research is the end. Everything is research. Everything is data to a strategist. Everything is research. Everything is data to you. And it is one of the most this particular point is one of the most misunderstood aspects of our job, right? When you're in your agency, people see you sit down, maybe because there's no brief and you're just chilling. And your colleagues just be looking at you like, oh, Jamal is less busy. Let's pass this to her. I mean, there's no brief. Alima is less busy. Please, let's pass this to her. She's not doing anything. I mean, there's no brief. Joshua does not have any brief. Let's give it. But no, the fact that you are seated and not doing anything does not imply that you are less busy. You are literally making sense of everything around you and within your environment. Yeah. And what you are doing is that you are taking in data and processing it, which is a form of research. When you start up outside of your agency, yeah, you are constantly doing research. You are constantly making sense of what is happening around you. When you're social media, you're doing the same thing. When you're driving home, you're doing the same thing. You're in a bus, you're doing the same thing. Your research never ends for a strategist. While an account manager, a creative, can decide to go and relax and not even use the news, listen to the news, or probably just not pay attention to anything, you cannot afford to do that. Because your job is to understand people in their natural context and bring that insight or that understanding into the agency. So it implies that you have to always, always, always live with the mindset that I am on a research mission. You're always paying attention, you're always spotting things, you're always observing, right? So research does not end, right? It doesn't end for your strategist and it shouldn't end. I was last year, I studied the works or the lives of like 10 strategists that are respected in the world. The first person I studied was Martin Wiegel. If you know me very well, I'm a fanboy of Martin Wiegel. I love him so much. I think he's arguably the best strategist, if not second best strategist, probably after James Oman in the world currently. That guy is smart as fuck. And I had a chat with him that I spoke to him that I would like to talk to him for 15 minutes, and he granted it. And I asked him a question like, what was the defining thing in your career? What made you do this really good at strategy? And he said that his first 2 years or 3 years as a strategist was a defining moment in his career. I said, tell me about it. And he said that then, before you started as a strategist, when you are employed as a strategy intern or account planning intern, you don't have an office. You don't have a table. You don't have a chair. You are sent into the streets to go and gather insights on anything. He said when he started, They didn't give him a desk, they didn't give him a chair, they only gave him a pen and a notepad. And they told him to go to the underground tunnel somewhere in the east of London, where he was, sat down there, and he said he always sit down there. He just wakes up, he comes to the office, he signs in, then he goes there to sit down. But he had notes. He has his notepad filled with observations for things and all of those things. It was one of those insight that he gathered while under the bridge that they used to win, that they used to pitch for Nike's account and won it back. Because ideally, the Just Do It campaign that everybody talks about now was built by the Wayden and Kennedy agency, right? But they lost the account. And Martin Wigel was the one that saw the insight that helped Wayden and Kennedy agency win that account back. And it has stayed with them ever since. Martin Wigel has left Wayden and Kennedy, went to BBDO, he has left BBDO, he has his own consultancy now. But his point was that a strategist, your office is in the world, is in amongst people. It is not in the office, your agency. But in this part of the world, yeah, the world has evolved and everybody thinks that you can know everything on social media, which is very, very wrong, to be honest, because for a lot of reasons that I don't want to delve into in this conversation, right? But your job is to be in the place where people are, right? So when you are not in the world and you're in your office, your mind should act or behave as if it's in the real world, so that you can begin to make sense of things and understand people, right? The people you work with are human beings as well. You should be able to understand them across different levels, right? And the story I told you about Martin Wigel is true for James Ullman, it's true for Paul Feldwick and all of these people that I said I contacted and I studied sometimes last year or year before. So research does not end for you. Research, maybe the only time research ends for you is when you're about to orgasm. Sorry for the words for those who probably might find that offensive, but I'm sorry. I just started saying maybe that's the only time research ends for you. But when you're watching a movie, you're listening to music, you're driving, you are talking to people, you are always doing research. This conversation is a research because I'm emitting data and you are getting it and you are making sense of it. The next slide, please. You can't understand people if you can't understand human beings if you are not human. There's absolutely no way you want to do that, right? You want to understand people through research. You must have built, okay, let's say you are conducting a formal research, right? Where you've designed your questions, you filled questionnaire and all of those things. Beautiful. And they've sent you the report and you're making sense of it. You can only make sense of things that makes you understand the people that have answered that question if you are truly in your human element. And what do I mean by you being human, being genuinely and shamelessly human? It implies that you are proud first that you are human and you are living that human truth across every environmental context that you find yourself. And how can you be a woman? You cry like people, you share, you express, you connect, you laugh, you dance. You do the things that natural human beings do that makes them alive. That is when you can understand people, because when you talk to somebody and somebody tells you, oh, I've lost my ability to laugh for the past 3 days, you would connect that if somebody, a human being, will know they laugh, then something serious is going on. Unlike somebody that's just says, unlike the person telling you, oh, I, I've lost my ability to laugh for the past days, you might just process this literally. Ah, your ability to laugh. What happened to your teeth? Ah, you cannot laugh. Um do you have a sore or a scar in your mouth? Is that right? No. But if you are living as a human, if you're human, when somebody tells you something, you interpret it from the lens of being a human being, and that makes a perfect sense to you. Another example, I like to use examples a lot because I think that makes a whole lot of these presentations less mechanical and makes it more relatable. So last week, I have one of my mentees is one of the big agencies, and she reached out to me. I called her. I wanted her to help me do something, and I realized she was sounding quite down on the phone. So I pressed her. I'm like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you like this?" And all of those things. She wouldn't open up in the first place, and I started probing, and later she told me about how she just got an apartment, and a landlord came in and served them notice to quit, just like 4 months after moving in already, and that has kept her in a very very serious emotional space, and she can't concentrate at work. It's messing with her mental health, it's making with this and all of those things, right? And what was meant to be like a 5 minutes call between myself and ended up being what was it called? Ended up getting to a strategy and clarity session where I had to help her demystify our problems, situations, how to go about it, and all of those things. But I was able to help her do that because I was able to connect with her, not on the level of a strategist and a mentee, or on this on the level of an industry colleague, because I was able to connect with her on a human to human level, like feel what she felt or probably was feeling if I was the one they served notice to quit 4 months into packing into a new house, right? So you cannot understand people, you cannot understand human and bring their and bring whatever it is you make for them in terms of insights into the agency or advertising creative. If you are not human, you have to be human. You must be able to connect with people, share with them, laugh with them, cry with them, dance with them, express with them, be a part of them. If you are not living as human, it's going to be difficult. So that's another non-negotiable that is very, very key, and I want you to hold very dearly. Next one, please. Yes, cognitive biases are bastards. I say this often. They are bastards, to be honest. You cannot understand anybody if you don't know and understand and manage your biases. Because biases are things, they are like mental shortcuts that we automatically rely on, and they dictate how life is and tell us how they help us interpret reality and interact with reality. Unfortunately, yeah, biases are not the true representation of life. They are never the true representation of life. They are just our a part of our brain, our neurons playing tricks on us and actually holding us captive. You get. So you have to be able to understand yourself so much that you know what are the key biases that you have, predominant biases that you have, and on what and when occasion do they play in, and you watch them, because biases prevent you from stepping outside yourself and stepping into somebody else's world. If you I remember when I ran my sociology program, and one of my graduating projects was for us to go to an entirely new culture and bring in cultural experiences that are new to us. And I traveled outside Lagos to somewhere in Nigeria, and it was difficult for me to actually really make sense of what those people are doing, because when I first encountered people dancing naked and all of those, I'm like, what the hell is this? That was when I said, wait till be this 2025 or 2020, oh sorry, 2023. Are you people kidding me? And all of those things, right? But it was my conditioning based on how I'm brought up and the things that I've been exposed to that was playing a trick on me. It was not them, it was me. So I had to tell myself, like, nah, man, your job is not here to come and judge or to come and criticize or talk about morality, Sam. Your job is to come here, make sense of what you're doing in its true or near true form, and report back, right? So the more you understand, your predominant biases, when and where they play up, and your ability to manage them allows you to connect with other people on their level, understand them deeply, and bring that insight or that understanding into the advertising creation, advertising planning, and execution process. Until you can do that, a lot of the things that you will be saying or the things you think you know are just things that you're just self-reinforcing, right? And this play up a lot in the Kejajari. When I say Kejajari, I'm referring to all agencies, right? You see a brief, they are brainstorming, and people will say, "Oh, Nigerian women are not, they are not this. All Nigerian men are Yahoo boys. All this." And madam, how many people have you spoken to in Nigeria for you to come to that conclusion? That's just a sentiment. Yes, we can use it to bounce up. We can use it as a springboard rather, to conduct a research or probably do some sort of expanded research or whatever. But you cannot just hold on to it and think that is the understanding that we should, what's the word? We should rule the world with. No, that your friends, family, whatever, play football, drink oats, or whatever, does not mean that is how everybody is doing. Or because you prefer Uber to InDrive does not imply that everybody like you does that. You are you, and your biases are just you, right? You need to put that aside and be able to go into the world, see people for what they are outside your bias, and bring the understanding in. Next slide, please. Yes, curiosity is fundamental for any strategist. You must be curious, but I think that we overflock the issue of curiosity and don't talk enough about patience. I like to tell people that one of the things that one of my secret weapon is patience. I'm very patient with knowledge. I read book. I can read one book for 6 months. I have read a book for a year before, right? I I I I I spent months just reading certain things. I spent days on an article, not because I cannot read it in 5 minutes or in 2 minutes, but my job is not to speed read. My job is to understand the core of an article, a book, and a friend, a target segment, and all of those things. So, in as much as it's important for you to be curious about people and the context that they are, it is also very, very important for you to be patient with people because people are like the most complex, not alike, we are the most complex animal, right? So if you're thinking that, oh, you want to understand people, you want to get along, you want to do this, you are not going to get an insight that actually will move people or will move campaign. Or sorry, we are not going to get an insight, sorry, that leads to a campaign that moves people to action, right? So patience is very, very key. I want a lot of people to be patient with knowledge, particularly in a world and a time where everybody is talking. Newsletters, they are talking on podcasts, they are talking on Instagram, they are talking on TikTok, everybody, cho, 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 cho. If you are not very, very patient, if you cannot slow down, detach, pay attention, be patient with whatever it is, you're just going to be taking in a lot of crap and feeding it into brief and decks, your creative briefs and decks, and thinking you are doing you are understanding people. You're not, you are just passing over the jargons and the upbeat information that you have out there. So you need to be patient for you to really understand people naturally, even if you're not a strategist. If you have been in relationships, you would understand, right? For you have to just be patient with people. So in as much as you're curious for them to understand, you just have to be very patient. Next slide, please. Context over content. Yes, what I'm telling you is content. You've been listening to me, I've been saying a lot of things. Yes, those are contents, but then there are context, and right. And when people say, "Oh, content is king" or something is king, no, I think that in the entire world, context is king because context is what shape people to behave the way they behave. Context is what makes people say certain things the way they say it, and context is, and I think that the most powerful context is culture, ideology, the things, the belief that guides how you think, how you see the world, and all of those things. So, in your quest in trying to understand people and trying as much as possible to bring them, to understand them, and also use their understanding to create groundbreaking or, in quote, disruptive campaigns, you must pay attention more to the context of our content. Somebody says something, in as much as you have heard, you need to probe further to understand why they have said it and where that why comes from. And in Nigeria, most of our whys are influenced by religion. Religion, our faith. Oh, I believe a woman should not wear. Somebody say, I believe a woman should not wear short skirts. Why? Because it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because my Bible or my Quran tells me so. Why do you believe it? If you keep asking why, you begin to understand where the context is from. And context is very deep. So understanding people, it demands that you pay more attention to the context over the content. The content is usually is a signal, it's just a signpost, it's just a notification. It's not a thing. So you try as much as possible to probe into the context influencing that particular expression. And sometimes the context could be environment. I do it that, right? When I find myself in the midst of people that I know that if I speak, they're most likely not going to connect with me, I tend to agree with them. Ronaldo is better than Messi. I'll say, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, Ronaldo is the best thing before sliced bread. Ronaldo, that guy, you can play and all of those things. But deep down, I know Messi is far better than Ronaldo for me, and I have my reasons. But then, I mean, there are like 20 people that believe Ronaldo is better than Messi. That environment is an environment that no matter what I say, that context, no matter what I say, they would not listen to me, right? So I am just going to play along with them. But if you're a strategist in that particular gathering and you hear me say that, you just go back and write your creative brief. Samuel thinks, or anybody that bears Samuel in Nigeria thinks Messi is inferior to Ronaldo. But if you probe my context, you would understand that that is not the situation. It was just I didn't mean what I said. Context just forced me. Next slide, please. Is there a way we can extend this, Jamal? Jamal, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. No, it's usually like it's a Google limitation that we have to work with. Except maybe
So
you
you
go out and come back in.
Okay, cool. Because all right, cool. No, no, Alan. Okay, let me rush through this. What's going to be our two people's disservice? Oh shit. Anyways, let's go. Know the limitations of formal research. Yes, most of us are quite familiar with formal research. In fact, when they ask a lot of people to define research, you're talking about formal research, your qual and cont, doing Google's forms and all of those things. Those are formal research. They are mostly useful for just getting quantitative data and all of those things. But they are not, I don't think they are the ideal form of research to understand people. I've always been a fan of informal research. And one of my favorite informal research, not my favorite, or the ones that the entire advertising and marketing world agree to being the ideal one, is ethnography. Very expensive, could be, but it fucking works. Right? Ethnography is following and studying how people behave in their natural context without being known that they are being what's the word, observed. It is what's it called, what detectives and um, you know um, all these crime investigators use to actually solve problems and get insight. So know the limitations of formal research. When you want to understand people, it's not the best, it's not the ideal one, but you can use this to complement the ideal kind of research, right? Next slide, please. Next slide. Now we've covered the non-negotiables. Um, Again, I call them non-negotiables because, to be honest, there's nothing you want to understand people if you don't know those things. No matter the tools you have and all of those things, you'll probably still go back and fall. You'll still always most likely fall short of understanding people. So when you have those soft skills or you have those things, whatever name you want to give it, when you have them studied and mastered, you're most likely going to thrive at the technical aspects of these things. And those are the tools that I want to explore with you now. Next slide, please. Yes, frameworks. Arguably the most popular word in marketing communications, if not marketing entirely. Right. I know the onus, sorry, the basis of this particular session was based on the 4C, right? Well, and that was the mistake I made at the last session we had last year. There are multiple frameworks, to be honest. 4C is just one of them. As you can see on your screen, I've used 4C, I've used 5C, I've used 7C. There's TBWA disruption, there's Insight has Marcoins, BBH has, like every agency have different frameworks for how they arrive at insight. So you are going to, depending on where you are now and where your career eventually takes you, you are going to encounter a lot of frameworks or multiple frameworks on your way, right? But that won't be a problem for you if you ideally understand or pay attention to the non-negotiables that we've just discussed, right? Because they essentially frameworks are mere signposts. They are just telling you where to go, right? So, for example, the FOSSI framework invented in the UK, it was invented a year ago because the British felt that they were intellectually superior to us in creating advertising. So they were like, oh, let's come together. Let's create a framework that tells people, or teaches people, or guides people on how to and where to look for in terms of looking for insight. Not necessarily they were not creating it because they needed it. They felt that they know how to generate insight. So let's tell the rest of the world, the fuckers, the ones that are not as intelligent as us. Those guys overrate themselves, to be honest, but hey, they are quite good. Don't mind me, right? The they invented it, the 4Cs, right, framework, and the primary motive was for them to show people or guide people where to look for in terms of asking questions to arrive at an insight that informs a strategy. So company, category, consumer, culture, fantastic. But over time, it has evolved to 5Cs. If you go to some agencies, I mean, when we were at Edelman, we had like 6Cs. Aside this 4C, we have channel, which is media, because we're primarily a communications agency. So as we're looking at consumer company, we need to understand the media, the channel, and make sense of that for our clients. We have collaborators. You see people tell you about companies. See, there are a lot of Cs. Framework, I swear to God. But I think what is essential for you is to be able to know that first, frameworks are just mere signposts. They're like something that just directs you to where to look, not necessarily what to look, right? And your ability to get insights from framework, one, is highly dependent on the soft skills that I've explained, and secondly, your ability to ask quality questions, which is the next slide we are going to, right? And asking quality questions is another session entirely that I cannot delve into in 1 hour. because that's an entire topic on its own. But your ability to ask better questions is the first step in actually doing a research that helps you understand people. Jamal, you can go to the next slide. Um, but you have an higher chance of asking better question as a strategist if you know and what your bias is, if you understand that research is never ending, if you like all of those points that are actually listed out, right? Those gives you like a good platform or increase your possibility of asking better question. And these were some of the questions that I created this question. I can't remember how long ago I created these questions. I That was a long time ago. I think I was working with Gerald Critchlow on Axe Sub-Saharan African campaign. Gerald Critchlow then was the chief strategy officer at the Republic IPG Republic agency in Amsterdam or thereabouts. He was the lead strategist. They were the global agency holding the global account. So I worked with them from Nigeria, and it was a culture. The brand had a culture problem, so we needed to solve it from a culture point of view. And this were like the questions that I framed from the forces framework that we worked with in framing our research, distilling an insight, and actually framing a strategy that actually launched the campaign. So these are examples, right? These are not cast in stone, please. If you eventually get this slide, please and please, I'm begging you on camera and it's on record, don't rely so much on these questions. These questions are mere what I just used for that particular campaign. There are going to be briefs that you get that you may not even need any of these questions. Some may require little questions, some may even require not much of these questions, and some may require that these questions be reframed. But I think that these are examples of how you ask better questions, right? You ask a question of ontology, in which in philosophy we call a question of existence. A client sent you a brief and said, "Oh, I have not made my sales are dropping and I want to improve it." You ask a question of ontology. You don't ask, you don't say, what is your sales have dropped to? No. The first question you should ask from a better question asking point of view is, were you even making sales in the first place? What if you're lying? That's a question of ontology. That's a question of existence. You first of all need to establish that the claim in that particular brief existed in the first place. Then you now begin to distill. So these were like some of the questions that I put together those years. I can't remember